Bear with me. Check it. There's a bit of a lag, but it should catch up. Okay.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. We've now reconvened in open session of McDougall Council meeting for tonight. Ratification of matters from closed session. One, the report on the cloud permit building system software has been received, and the training, some training on that by council. And second, council acknowledges their role in reviewing the planning board report that's coming later on tonight. Deputations, none scheduled for tonight. Item 6, planning and building, report of the chief building official, 2020-04, building permit activity update. Mr. Dixon.
You may want to let him know again.
Mr. Dixon.
Yes, sorry.
We're just ready to receive your report on the building permit activity update.
Oh, okay. That would be, yeah, sorry. This is the year to date. Yeah, so basically, as of the end of October, we are sitting at 100 permits issued compared to 78 for the same period last year. So we're up about, not quite 25%. And the value of construction is also up considerably. Just wanted to let council know that the permit activity is good. Considering the start of the year, we weren't really sure what was going to happen, but things really took off. And if anybody in the building industry knows, it just was it's a pretty crazy year. So, and things are still going. We still got permits, applications coming in. Some people with the mild weather, it's amazing today how much the phone picked up with people still thinking that, hey, weather's turning out, maybe I can get that foundation in. So it's good news for us, good news for the area. So yeah, everything's going pretty good there.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any questions or comments from council? Oh, all right. Item 6.2 from Mr. Jackson, the Prairie Sound Area Planning Board, consent application B35 and 36 for Garrick 2 Corp, Gary Phillips, 4 new lots, 1 lot addition, and new private right-of-way, Portage Lake. Mr. Jackson.
Is in
I don't see him in the waiting room anymore.
no.
Oh, sorry, happy again.
Hi, Mr. Jackson.
Good evening, Your Worship. Yes, this application involves a rather challenging property on Portage Lake with actually 2 separate parcels. Some of the old timers might remember it as the Stevens lands. The applications involve the creation of 3 lots on the west end of the property with a new right-of-way road that I think is under construction as we speak off of the end of Pine Ridge, where there's really only one access available to switch back to meet the municipality's private road standards. So there are 3 lots and 1 retained. This property abuts Steam Whistle Fire Road, but it's not available to be extended to the subject land. Henceforth, the new road will be constructed to provide access to these waterfront properties. When they put the access road in, there's a second application that hopes to divide the full original 100-acre lots on the north side of Portage Lake in lots 24 and 25, as shown. The waterfront lands are known to be quite steep on these two parcels, but there is a plateau on top where there's an existing trail, and it's intended that the transactions are related so that the private road can extend to lots 24 and 25. So there's a relationship there. There's a lot going on, but it's, as I say, it's a challenging property. We will be imposing the standard road conditions in terms of indemnification and the actual quality of the road so that it can sustain emergency vehicles. Late today, Lori sent me some of the concerns. I can't say, I contacted the applicant to see if they had any intended future follow-up for lots 24 and 25, and they don't at this time. So I don't have an answer to that obvious question. Oh, sorry. I'm still there. Yes. Okay. If there are any questions of council, Your Worship, I'll do my best to try and answer them.
You fall off your chair? Did your computer fall?
It was my computer. I was fine.
You're all right then.
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillor Ryman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question regarding in one of the paragraphs under the policy of framework. And I was wondering if Mr. Jackson could clarify, it is believed therefore that the septic application creating a series of recreational properties with respect to section 1 of the PBS, I'm just kind of puzzled on it is believed.
No, it is. It's kind of as I said, a challenging property. If I could just say it even though it's sort of in downtown Nobel, it really is a waterfront kind of context rather than, like, you could never really practically get water to it. It's got some pretty high rocky terrain that you have to deal with. So I think if you look at it in terms of the PPS, it's more of a recreational property rather than an urban property in that sense. So it complies with those provincial policies.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. West, do you want to add any comments at this point in time?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Jackson, I wonder about adding a condition of rezoning to lots 24 and 25 that would recognize the frontage and area to help limit further development. If they wanted to come back, council may want that as an additional planning consideration.
Yes, Your Worship, through you, that's a good question. The question that Lori and the CEO, Tim Hunt, and I discussed was, you know, are we talking about a plan of subdivision here? In which case, should we be looking at it in that context? So my sense is that there's not much more development potential, but I don't know. And what Lori's suggesting gives us another layer to examine that issue if it should have come along. We were going to try and get out and boat the shoreline, but we haven't had a chance yet. And we're still going to do that because it has some dangling issues with respect to a couple of items relating to council's policies. But I think that's a fair suggestion, Your Worship, to give us that extra layer of review protection going forward.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, Councillor Ryman? Oh, sorry, Mrs. West, were you not finished? No, okay, sorry.
Another concern, Your Worship, that I had with this application is the closure of the concession road allowance. Historically, council has not approved those requests, and I think it needs to be considered prior to whether or not we want to pass a resolution in support of the application for that lot addition. And then the remaining item that I had concerns with is within the official plan, where it requires any new private right-of-ways to be by plan a condominium, so that those roads have a maintenance agreement on them. So I'd like to refer that to Mr. Jackson to comment on as well.
Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Worship. The suggestion that we do private road extensions by condominium processes was one the province recommended. It could have a context, not so much here. I think that the way that we deal with private rights of way in terms of the 5126 protection through indemnification clauses and the standards we impose is more of an appropriate option to deal with private roads. I'm not opposed to private road condominiums, but there's a lot to them that I don't think council wants to necessarily jump into in sort of a normal waterfront circumstance. So it was a tool the province thought we should use mostly for their protection, not ours. I think we have a pretty good program. So I don't think we need to institute that with respect to this application or applications.
Okay. Any question, Councillor Ryman? Did you have another question?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Mrs. West did touch on it, and just referring to the right-of-way, and it did mention that the client would be interested in maybe acquiring a portion of. Of course, I think there's, I know we're not going to be hopefully doing anything.
He muted himself.
No, you muted yourself there.
Councillor Ryman, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I would rather look at the possible an easement rather than handing over a portion of. Thank you.
Did you get all that, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I think it's fair, and it's something that Lori and I were talking about as part of our more detailed look at the various aspects of that road allowance. We don't close road allowances leading to water as a matter of principle. Sometimes those road allowances will never be able to be used because they're landlocked or they're bluffs, etc. But we could certainly look at relocating it where it might work. So no, the point's well taken, Your Worship, from Councillor Ryman, and we want to look at that detail as well.
Okay. Then I see a suggestion from Mrs. West that this be referred to our planner for further comments. Council will have seen that recommendation as well. Is this property within the Nobel settlement area?
Yes.
Which, I mean, normally we're looking for municipal services, which would be the municipal water system to be used to service this. I mean, there's some, you kind of touched on that the topography may make it not doable in terms of road. If you just looked at this on the plan basis, you would say there's a concession road running along the north of this, an open concession line. If it's not for topography, you would simply say there should be a municipal road pushed through the back end of these and driveways off that into these properties. We do an awful lot of these right-of-ways recently, which is starting to concern me. At some point in time, people come back to the municipality and say, I built on there, I've got a nice property now, I'm paying a lot of taxes, I want a municipal road, and then the pressure gets put on council. So I just have some concerns. I think we need a little more physical evidence presented to council in terms of just what the topography is here, in terms of whether it's a site visit or whether it's aerial photography or whatever. But I think council needs more information than just to take it on face value at this point in time, that something more suitable couldn't be done here on this property in terms of road access and municipal service access. Is that possible to have that for council?
I think so. I do believe that the owners have looked at this fairly carefully. We've had some pre-consultation with staff, and it's got some very, I'm going to call them fatal difficulties with extending normal services, but we can bring that data back to council.
Okay, so I think at this point then there's a variety of questions that have been raised here tonight, including getting some input from our planner on this. So I think if there's nothing further from council, we'll just leave this at the stage it's at right now, wait for some further information to come back to council. Is that fair?
I think.
Okay, thank you. Any matters arising under planning or building? Move on to bylaw enforcement. Correspondence requesting bylaw amendment attachment to permit backyard chickens in residential zones. Mr. Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship. There was a number of correspondences that Mayor and Council have received. Certainly, we haven't had an opportunity to prepare a report for it yet because Council's just receiving this correspondence tonight. I do believe everything that has happened with regard to this correspondence coming in has resulted because of some enforcement that we were doing under our zoning bylaw with regard to backyard chickens. So at this point, also with the clerk, the information and the correspondence that has been given forward to council is for your information, and perhaps to give staff direction if they want to report back with regard to the potential for doing an amendment to the zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Constable?
Yeah, I would definitely support looking into this further, amending the bylaw. Also as well, is it possible to, if council does decide to look into this deeper, the person that was charged, are we able to kind of put things off because they only have 30 days to remove all of their hens? If this is something that council decides they would like to look further into, are we able to delay that until council has a firm decision, yes or no, they do or don't want to proceed?
Mr. Leduc?
Mayor Robinson, I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss any particulars of a particular case right now that is ongoing. Certainly, we give ample time for people to be able to comply with bylaws based on individual circumstances, and we're always working with our customers and our ratepayers when it comes to compliance. That if there's a requirement for an extensions, oftentimes we grant those extensions.
Okay, I think just for the record too, just to show how we got here, right now, our official plan and the zoning that goes along with this was passed properly by council with public meeting and public input to have these rules set up. Am I correct in that?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So I mean, nothing was done here like to go after any one individual. These are rules that are on our books. They're there. Council as a rule does not normally get involved with bylaw enforcement on an ongoing matter, as Mr. Leduc has just pointed out. Also, my understanding is our bylaw enforcement is complaint-based for the most part. And I think Mr. Leduc alluded to that earlier, that this was one particular action that was based on a complaint. Am I correct in that?
You're correct, Your Worship.
So to start changing the official plan or the zoning bylaw on the fly is something there needs to be input from the public, obviously, to do that. And I think that's the course to do. So I think at this point, it's probably advisable for council to leave the enforcement issue in the hands of the bylaw department and the staff, and to ask for a report. I think council, if you're supportive of that, will ask for staff to prepare a report based on this correspondence that has been sent in to us. It's quite numerous. Obviously, we're going to hear at this point from people who are in favor of doing this. And I certainly personally have no reason not to be in favor of this, but we still have to adhere to the fact that we do have bylaws on the books that we do adhere to. And if they're going to be changed, they have to change in the proper way. In terms of Councillor Constable's specific question, I guess, Mr. Leduc, your response was that you do have some leeway in terms of, I guess we call it discretion. So at this point in time, I haven't known council to ever get directly involved with a particular case, and we normally leave it up to the discretion of the bylaw department. Am I correct with that?
Yes, your worship, you're correct. And we could call it discretion, or we could call it, generally working with our ratepayers and our clients to come to compliance. And oftentimes the initial time frame that's given for compliance is changed based on circumstances of the individual to comply. So it's not something that's unusual for us to do.
Okay. For the comment, Councillor Constable?
No, not at this time. I do understand there is a process to take. It's and we're doing due process at this point. So,
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council or staff? So at this point, just to summarize then, staff are going to collect all this correspondence that has come in, prepare a report, do a review of our particular bylaw that refers to this, and bring back a report and some options for council to consider in this particular matter. Does that summarize it correctly for everyone? All right, thank you. Matters arising under bylaw enforcement?
None, your worship.
Thank you. Item 8, fire protection, report of the fire chief 2020-09, operations update. Mr. Leduc.
Thank you, your worship. Just a quick update with regard to our training. Everybody, I think, is very familiar with the way the infection rates and numbers are going on a daily basis in Ontario. So after Thanksgiving, I made the decision that we were going to go back to non-contact training. So what that means is that we're doing video coursework with written response assignments that are handed in to me based on the different types of training that we have upcoming. That since Thanksgiving is now going to be extended right through to the end of this year, based on what we're seeing on a daily basis with regard to infection numbers in Ontario. And the whole idea is that we're trying to do everything we can to ensure that our firefighters don't come together without good reason. And if we can train remotely so that we don't have to gather, then there's less chance that we can inadvertently have an infection in our ranks because of, the nature of this disease, that people can have it and don't know it. So that's what the intention has been since Thanksgiving, and we're going to carry that forward now through the end of the year.
Okay, any questions on that report? No. Thank you. Item 2 under fire protection, fire service simplified risk assessment. Mr. Leduc.
Thank you, your worship. So this is a document it's a living document. It's working all the time as we move through year to year to year. What it, in a nutshell, what the risk assessment involves is we tend to do a 3-year period. So 2017, 18, 19, we look at those statistics for various aspects. So in the risk assessment, we have demographic profile, which our updated demographics are based on the 2016 census. So we don't have any new real information on that. since the last census. So we have to just rely on that for the last 3 years. Then we have our building stock information, and that's information that I gather from the chief building official on an annual basis. And it's based on actual live building activity in the municipality, types of buildings, residential, industrial, commercial. So we look at all those numbers and we compile those numbers, which are in the attached report. And then there's also the fire loss profile, and then our municipal property dollar loss. So those are the factors that we look at when I prepare the risk assessment. And this is a document that helps drive, future, could be training for the fire department. It could be enforcement for the fire department. It's just, we try to find any trends and potential unsafe fire behaviors that we're seeing in the field when we respond to fires. So the information that's before you on the risk assessment is based on that. So if we go to the section on fire loss profile, which will be your table 1, municipal fire deaths and injuries. So you'll see the 3 different years. We have had only 1 injury in 2017 from a fire, and we've had nothing since. We've had no fire deaths and no injuries in that period, other than 1 smoke inhalation occurred in 2017. If you look at the property dollar loss, some of the facts in the bottom column. So our total dollar losses in total in the 3-year period, the amount of $1.6 million in losses. But then you compare that to the total dollar saved value of $16,200,000. So there's you see the effectiveness of a fire service being able to respond timely to fires, and dollar loss versus dollar save value. And then if you go to table 3, which are some of the fire causes, you can see the different types that we've determined through fire investigation, through origin and cause. And then from that information, it drives some of the programs or some of the activities that we do in the fire service. So some of the things that we noticed in previous years was not necessarily structure fires, but when it came to wildland fires, the inattentiveness of persons when they're having outside, whether it be a campfire, bonfire, or whatever, burning debris. They didn't, a lot of the fires that we go to with regard to open air burning, people just didn't see the danger involved in potentially having a wildfire or an open fire in their backyard that they don't pay attention to. That caused us to rewrite our open air burning bylaw, which went into effect 2019. And in that, part of the reasons why we rewrote the bylaw was to update it, obviously, to a timely manner. But at the same time, we wanted to put into effect set fines so that we could have POA Part 1 charges that we could lay on the spot when we get to a fire or a burning complaint where we saw that the persons were not obeying the burning bylaw. So that enforcement just started. So that bylaw went into effect with our approved set fines late 2019, and the 2020 fire season was the first time that we had the ability to actually do POA Part 1 charges. We laid a number of them this year, and certainly from what we hear word of mouth, it has been effective. One of the other things that we noticed in 2017, 2018 with regard to structure fires, we noticed that a number of these fires, people were home. They stated in interviews afterwards that they didn't hear alarms go off. So that tells us that they didn't have working smoke alarms in their structures. Now, luckily, They were not sleeping at the time for the ones that did occur. They were discovered by themselves because they were up and around inside their homes, and they evacuated. But because the amount of damage that was present, we could not prove whether or not there actually was a working smoke alarm, which would have caused us at the time, if we could have proved it, then we could have laid POA Part 1 charges under the fire code for violations for having non-working smoke alarms. But because of that information, and it concerned us, so in 2018, we designed and we implemented a door-to-door and a dock-to-dock smoke alarm campaign where we went and visited approximately 150 some residences across the municipality, checking on working smoke alarms in their residences. So that program, we believe, was effective for us. Compliance rate with what we found for compliance to non-compliance was basically the same as the rest of the province, around 90 some percent. But just to take that a next step further, in 2019, we had 3 structure fires where persons were present. Smoke alarms did sound. We confirmed smoke alarms were sounding because we heard them when we arrived, and all the persons evacuated, there were no injuries. So we believe that part of our smoke alarm program that we did in 2018 transformed into some successful conclusions in 2019. So anyways, it's just a snapshot of that 3-year period, and it's something that we update on an annual basis, and that's just information I want to provide to council so that you can see how we drive some of our programs based on our own statistics.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council on that report? Councillor Ryman?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say that is a great document and provides us with lots of stats and accountability. So great job on that. Thank you.
Questions or comments? I'll just echo Councillor Ryman's comments. I mean, it's good to see it in a lot of these things we kind of take for granted, but it's good to see it in the report form like this, and to see that there is some science involved into how we get to certain points in terms of what we do with the fire department and the fire services. So thank you. Matters arising under fire protection?
And none, your worship.
Emergency management, COVID-19 emergency response. Just a reminder, the Municipality of McDougall is still under declaration of emergency given the second wave and the numbers that we're seeing in Southern Ontario. Fortunately, we've been very fortunate in our area, but I think it only makes sense at this point we stay the course in terms of the declaration of emergency. Any input from council or staff on that particular item? Matters arising in emergency management? Seeing none. Item 10, recreation, report of the Director of Parks and Recreation, 2020-07, general update. Mr. Leduc.
Thank you, your worship. Just a quick one here. So our standing order for maintenance still remains in place. Nobel Beach, however, the washrooms now have been closed for the season, so we are not attending that on a daily basis. But we are still doing our daily disinfection at the McDougall Recreation Center. And we've actually stepped it up a bit to different areas since we have more users using the play surface. Our facilities park, most of our amenities remain in use until the snow arrives. Fall maintenance and winter preparation continue. The Waubun Community Hall remains closed to the public. Our indoor group restrictions have decreased to 10, and continuous space of 2-meter distancing remains in effect. When we get into December and we start making ice for the winter, we will have a contingency plan that I will bring forward to council and our emergency control group for review with regard to how we're going to operate the McDougall Recreation Center skating facility for the winter based on COVID-19 restrictions that may or may not be in place at the time.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, council, on that report? Seeing none, move on to Parks and Recreation Report 2020-08, Winter Recreational Use 9 Mile Lake Park. Mr. Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship. So 9 Mile Lake Road is currently or presently a seasonally maintained road. So that means there is no winter plowing. The unplowed road in winter is used by snowmobiles and groomed by the Snowmobile Club. In the winter of 2017-2018, the road was plowed all winter for the purpose of municipal construction at 9 Mile Lake Park. From what we could tell, the plowed road did not negatively affect the continued use of the side portion that was used for the snowmobile trail. So during that winter, we also noticed that vehicles and trailers using the Lakehead area turnaround for staging for snowmobilers and day users to the lake. And it helped to keep some of the problems that occur occasionally at the Georgia Nordic headquarters parking area, which is strictly for users or members of the club. And oftentimes there are some difficulties there with persons who are not users using that site. That being said, so the winter recreation for 9 Mile Lake and 9 Mile Lake Park are greatly underutilized. The main roadblock here is the road not being plowed into the park and to the lakehead. I believe that we could be proactive and promote winter use of 9 Mile Lake Park and that area, and the use of the gazebo that's down there for winter picnics. The surrounding parkland is 3,900 square or foot frontage on 9 Mile Lake and is 51 acres in size. Additionally, there are thousands of acres of crown land adjacent to our parkland. Snowmobilers have access to this area, but persons without snowmobiles do not, because generally people don't walk into that area due to the limited parking that's at Highway 124 and 9 Mile Lake Road. If we look into the future, establishing 9 Mile Lake Park as a winter staging area and start point for snowmobilers may be critical if private lands leading to this area change ownership and potentially snowmobile trail access is removed. At the beginning of 9 Mile Lake Road, the vehicle traveling public cannot park and walk into the site because the space is limited. I suggest that we plow 9 Mile Lake Road again this winter to see how things work out. That would allow persons to have access in there, whether you're ice fishing or skiing, outside of the club areas, snowshoeing, picnicking, whatever it happens to be. But it is a nice spot, which does not have really any encumbrances from neighboring properties there in the wintertime, because most of those properties are only seasonal use and they're not used in the wintertime. Plus the area that we have we have a buffer between cottages and our own property. Having discussions with the CAO and the director of operations, he suggests that 20 minutes or more would be all it would take to do the plowing there, and then depending on snowfall and how much parking lot we want to plow would also be in consideration for time frame. Now, it's not something that we plan in the discussions that I had with the CAO and director of operations. It's not, the road plowing is not something that we would be expected to be doing every time it snows. It would be pretty well if there was a really heavy snow, or on Thursdays or Fridays in preparation for the weekend use. Similar to what we do at some of our other areas that we provide winter recreational parking, such as at Lorimer Lake or down Trout Lake Road area. So it's a suggestion that I wanted to bring forward, being that we're leading up to winter season, to see if it's a possibility that we might try to plow the 9 Mile Lake Road again this winter to see how it works out with recreational activities.
Thank you for that report. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Ryman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would be, I guess, as long as there is no conflict with the snowmobile groomer going down there and us, kind of keeping the road open in wintertime, I would I would support Mr. Leduc's recommendation. Thank you.
Just, I guess, off that point, have you been in contact with the local snowmobile club, Mr. Leduc?
Your worship, but we haven't at this time because I wanted to bring it forward to council first before I started to talking to other parties to see if there was any amenity to do that.
Okay, well, I think there's some expertise involved with how you work with snowmobile groomer and trail maintenance. So I think Councillor Ryman's point's well taken, that should be part of this process, is contacting them just to make sure. I know it seemed to work all right 2 years ago when we did it for the construction of the gazebo, but I don't run that groomer, so I can't weigh in on that. So maybe you can add that to one item so far. Councillor Gregory?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Apart from the snowmobile, I agree with Mr. Leduc that it is a wonderful spot to go to and could provide good recreation for our constituents. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Constable?
Yeah, do we have any idea when we did keep it open, how much use was down there?
Mr. Leduc?
Your worship, I don't have any stats, just observations that we made when we would go down there, that on weekends, there tended to be always some vehicles that were in there parked, staged with trailers, and you could see that they obviously offloaded, whether they were just going out snowmobiling for the day or if they were going out fishing or if they're doing any other activities. Don't know exactly, but there did seem to be, I won't say a tremendous amount of activity because it wasn't known, but certainly there was activity that happened down there.
Councillor Constable?
I know from a towing standpoint, they'll be disappointed because they usually drag about 2 cars a winter from down there, especially in late winter. So, but no, that's great. Thank you.
Every year there's a couple adventuresome souls that think their vehicles are snowmobiles and make their attempt. So there will be some loss of revenue to the local towing companies, no doubt,
Yeah.
if it were to pass through council. Don't see it specifically in the report, Mr. Leduc, but I assume you're talking about daytime parking only, no overnight?
Yes, that's correct. It'd be day use only, same as like our park is open right now. In our bylaw, we say 8 in the morning till 10 in the evening. So we would be promoting it as a day use in the wintertime. Now in the summertime, there is overnight parking that happens there, but that's not what our intent is here for the winter use.
Okay. And it would have to be, I guess, it wasn't that large an area last time that was plowed out because it was more specific to the construction of the gazebo than anything else, although some people did take care of it. But I think if council were to give this permission to go ahead, then I think you might need a more substantial area than what you did have down there last time, just because of the size of trucks and trailers. It's certainly not unusual to see a 4-place snowmobile trailer attached to a truck, which takes a lot of room to move around. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing for council that generally there's consensus that this would be a good idea to move forward with this. So I think maybe if you can just come back to council with some confirmation from the local snowmobile club that this doesn't disrupt their operations. I mean, we don't want to add a staging area, but take away a link, because it is a vital link going up through that area. I agree, anytime that we can take further advantage of our facilities and that our public use them, and we're not just restricting this to McDougall residents either. So this would just be open for all public use. That's your recommendation?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So am I correct in summarizing council's support for this from what I saw and I heard? Okay, all right. We'll leave this back to you, Mr. Leduc, and we'll await a final report on it.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Item 10.3, Meadowcrest Park correspondence, boat launching at park facility. Mr. Leduc.
Your Worship, this is similar to what has happened with regard to backyard chicken complaints. So this is correspondence that has come into Mayor and Council. We haven't had a chance to do a report for that. So what I suggest is that council receives the correspondence, and then we can do a report, bring back to council after we analyze the different sides of the argument that have come in. So just currently the way it is that when we initially did our permit from the MNRF and Fisheries and Oceans to actually develop the park and the waterfront, if you remember, our initial ask was for a larger shoreline area to be developed, and it was substantially reduced for a beach only, basically not, I won't even say 30 meters, so about 30 feet of what was allowed to be developed. And so we developed it as a beach only, and the like the gravel area that or driveway, you could say, that we put down to the beach area was for our purposes for maintenance and getting materials in with our vehicles so that we weren't getting our vehicles stuck. Certainly it has been looked at by persons that it looks like a launching area, but it certainly hasn't been in the past. Things came to light this summer where there were some arguments from more users who get to know the area, between different persons who were users at the site and using the beach versus people that were coming in with vehicles to launch boats. Things came to more ahead this fall. We had put in a series of posts that would restrict the size of the vehicle that could get past, which would basically be our maintenance tractor. And since then it generated a bunch of the correspondence. So we would like time to be able to analyze everything and bring a proper report back to council.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from council? Right, I think Mr. Leduc has summarized it quite well. I mean, there were different opinions back when we originally made our decision to have this just as a beach. We did apply for the permit for the beach that we do have there, and that's what's in place right now. At this point in time, there is no direction from council to make any change to what is currently down there. Seems to me as I go through the correspondence that people who are closer to the beach are less in favor of the ramp, and those who are further away who won't be impacted by the daily use seem to be in favor of having it as a ramp. So it's going to be a difficult chore for council to look at this. So at this point in time, we'll just wait for the report to come back to council. I think we're probably expecting from staff a report, sort of a year-end report on all our facilities. We made some changes this summer at George Hunt and at Nobel Beach, all that. So it'll be, I think, important for council to get an overall report on each one of our facilities, just in terms of how they were used, what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do going into the 2021 season for all these facilities to try. And we're never going to keep everyone happy. We're going to try and keep as many people happy as possible among our McDougall residents. So I think that's enough direction, Mr. Leduc, to leave it to you. Okay, thank you. Public Works, no report tonight. Matters arising. Environment, Waste Management, no report. Item 12.2, report of the Environmental Services Supervisor 2020-6. Mr. Goldman, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I'll just read from the report. We department-wide, we've been following all the COVID procedures, and that's been going well for us. At the landfill facility, the facility's been functioning well. We're experiencing higher flows during the fall season. We've sent out 2 pumps for repair, replacement. I just got word of those, and the estimate is less than what we expected, so that's good. The WSP has completed the fall sampling of the landfill site, and that'll be the last sampling regime that goes into the annual report, which will be available in the spring of 2021. I just wanted to pay special attention to the Nobel water system. I have a more in-depth report of what happened last week. We had a service line break at 36 Nobel Road. which could only be repaired by shutting off a flow to the community. We made every effort to maintain water flow to the community and fix a leak under a live condition. However, the logistics of pumping the water out of the excavation and maintaining a safe work environment dictated we had to shut down in order to make the repair. At the writing of this report, the system was under boil water advisory due to the pressure loss in the water system. And as you're aware, the boil water advisory came off last Friday. I don't believe we could have done anything more to repair the system more safely or efficiently. We have reordered the parts that were used. The system was flushed immediately after the break occurred, and 2 sets of bacteria samples were taken to satisfy the requirement of the Ministry of Health or of the Ministry of Environment and the Health Unit before the system can return back to normal, which we did satisfy those requirements. And we did get a rescind on the boil water advisory from the Health Unit. Again, that was last Friday. I just want to say a big thank you to all of the people that were involved with the event. We had immediate response from staff with pumps from setting up at the site, which included the excavator, dump trucks, diesel light stand, pumps, generators, traffic control. All this was mobilized quite quickly, and it was inclement weather as well. I would also like to thank the support staff in the office handling communications. I was able to communicate with Brian, who coordinated with Lori, and I'm sure there's others involved. And all the notifications were made that I'm aware of. And we had those on the website, and there was also an email notification. I believe it was also read on the radio later that night. Plus, along with the front office staff, they were communicating directly with people who called in. This break occurred around just after lunchtime on Monday, so this was during regular staff hours. We had 9 staff members on site who worked the job till it was done, and the conditions were not exactly favorable. Like I mentioned, rain, snow, cold, dark, and we basically didn't finish till midnight. Again, I'd like to say thank you to all that were involved in and acting as a team. This is why I enjoy working at McDougall. I'm sure the public appreciate this as well. Along with this, the fall flushing of the hydrants has been completed, and Crawford Septic is slightly higher flows than normalized to be anticipated with the rain events. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councilor Ryman?
Once again, Your Worship, of course, I was part of that shutdown, and I just want to congratulate Steve on job well done. The updates were bang on, and I've heard lots of good positive comments in this area here. So I think that was considering the inclement weather and everything and stuff like that, a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? I'll just echo those sentiments. Thank you very much to everyone from the water staff to all the rest of the staff in the municipality who teamed up together and helped get us through that situation. I mean, it's one of those things you take water for granted until you turn the tap and it's not there. So it was certainly back up and running in a very expedient manner, and the communication that part of it was very well done as well. So people knew that they had to do the boil water afterwards. I know it's probably more precautionary than anything else, but it's part of what you have to do just to make sure that our water system is safe for everyone to use. So job well done. I suppose the only good thing out of this was it wasn't a -30 in February. It would have made it even more challenging, but I'm sure your team is up to that challenge as well. Not that I'm hoping that happens at all. So thank you very much for that effort, and thank you very much for your report tonight, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Matters arising from environment. Finance, accounts payable. Moved by Councillor Constable, seconded by Councillor Ryman, that the tax list of accounts payable for November 5th, 2020 in the amount of $194,719.41 and payroll for November 5th, 2020 in the amount of $44,662.34 be approved for payment. Councillor Millat had declared a conflict due to his place of business with this resolution. Discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Item 2 under finance, from the manager funding Federation of Canadian Municipalities, asset management program enhancements in McDougall, funding approval. Dollar figures are in the report that you received there. 44,000 up to $44,200. Mrs. West.
Thank you, Your Worship. This will fund the asset management software that the treasurer has been investigating. So good news for us.
That's good. Okay, thank you. Any questions on that? Matters arising under finance. Administration, from Mac Bain, Executive Director, FONOM, Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, Ontario developing a stronger, more effective Blue Box program. I'm going to speak to this at all, Mrs. West.
Municipality of McDougall does not have to transition until 2025, I believe. So more information will come forward at a future date.
Okay. It's all part of the effort, though, to put more onus on the actual producers as we go forward. So it's good that FONOM has represented us as a municipality in this discussion. So our thanks to them, and we'll look forward to the details specific to McDougall once we get to that stage in 2025. From Graydon Smith, President of AMO, proposed transition schedule for Blue Box program to new full producer responsibility regulation. Any further comment on this item, Mrs. West?
Just there for information, Your Worship.
Thank you. And item 14.3, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, municipal delegations at Roma 2021 conference. Mrs. West.
Roma is anticipating the 2021 conference to be virtual. So this is the opening to prepare for delegations. If council would like to present to one of the ministries, I'd be happy to assist.
So that's information for council. If anyone, as you have to decide whether they're going to be attending it virtually or not. At this point in time, I don't have any suggestions for delegations.
Our deadline is November 30th.
So we've got almost a month yet before that. So if anyone does have any, if you can make them known to Mrs. West, then she can make the application. I suppose before you do that, you should try and get it done before the next council meeting so that council can give approval for that deputation to proceed rather than just on the basis of an individual councillor. Matters arising in administration? No. Request for support from the village of Sunridge, Township of Macker, Drive Test Center and Sunridge permanent closure. Seeing any? Matters arising in request for support. Motions of which notice has been previously given. Have been made aware of any committee reports. North Bay Prairie Sound District Health Unit, School in Nipissing District has first individual test positive for COVID-19. Also from the health unit, Community Flu Clinic in South River. From the health unit, confirmed second case of COVID in a school in the Nipissing District. Item 4, Wellness Center Pool Committee draft minutes. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. I did attend on behalf of the Municipality of McDougall as the voting member. I know our councillor backup for that is Councillor Constable, and I know he was observing the meeting as well, was in communication with me during the meeting. McDougall is supportive of all the recommendations that came forward in that meeting to move it forward. Any questions from council in terms of that meeting and that report? There were some options obviously that were being voted on during that meeting. Pretty self-explanatory, I think. Right. But I'm very pleased to see us getting to this stage. Hopefully we can get the funding now that we need for this. It's pretty substantial. Probably the worst thing that could happen right at this point in time would be the call of a federal election, which would stop everything that's in process right now and hurt the funding application. So hopefully we can get past this next stage. Item 5, report from Councillor Gregory and Councillor Ryman, Prairie Sound Area Planning Board. Town of Prairie Sound requests to leave the board. Councillors. Councillor Gregory.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I think it's pretty self-explanatory as far as the report goes. Just be aware that we will receive request for an opinion from the ministry, and it'll probably come to our CAO and Lori, and probably to the mayor. Asking questions, seeing how you feel about things as far as planning board and maintaining its services the way it is, whether or not it could be changed. It has stimulated, the request by Prairie Sound has stimulated a lot of discussion and controversy amongst the municipalities that participate. Councillor Ryman, do you want to add to that one?
No, Councillor Gregory, thank you. Through your worship, I think that you covered everything there.
Okay, thank you.
What I'm going to suggest is that we ask staff to prepare a report to council just in terms of what the options are for McDougall. In terms of, obviously we know status quo, we're members of the Prairie Sound Area Planning Board, and that's what we have now. Some municipalities, Prairie Sound has made it official that they want to leave the Prairie Sound Area Planning Board, which if the rest of us stay has financial implications in terms of we will now have a larger share to pay. So there's a cost implication. I was happy to see the province did address that in their questioning, because they realize too that it's not just a matter of one member leaving, other members have to weigh in terms of what the impact is on them. So I thank the province for at least recognizing that impact to us, but I think it's important that we as council get a report from our staff just laying out what our options are and what the financial implications are for us under the various options. This is not a reasonable request.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Time-wise, I'm not comfortable responding to the province at this point on behalf of McDougall Council because we haven't had a chance to discuss this at the council table. And it would also be difficult for any of our staff members to respond to them for the very same reason. So I think we need this report. What's a reasonable time frame, Mrs. West, in terms of that request? Careful.
Meeting is November 18th. That's 2 weeks, which might be a little tight to prepare for. The following meeting is our preliminary budget, so perhaps that would be a good meeting to bring it forward to.
Okay, because it will have budget implications, so it kind of fits into both of those. So is that acceptable to council to do it December 4th for that report to come from staff? Councillor Gregory?
Yes, Your Worship, that's acceptable, certainly to me. But if you get a phone call from the ministry, perhaps we could give a direction for a response when that phone call comes.
Okay, well, I think our response would be just what I summarized is at this point in time, council has not, all of council, I mean, our planning board members are up to date with it, but not all of council is not up to date in terms of what our options might be and and none of us know what the financial implications would be to the municipality of McDougall. So I think our response would just be, this has now been put on the council agenda and we'll be receiving a report. And after that, we'll be in a position to comment back to the province. But at this point, it would be premature for us to comment.
Thank you.
Matters arising. Committee reports. For the CAO, Mr. Hunt's on vacation this week. Item 19, general items and new business. Seeing none. Item 20, bylaws. Council will now consider bylaw number 2020-48 being a bylaw to declare to be surplus, stop up, close, and transfer part of the original shore road allowance in front of Lot 1 and concessions 11 and 12, Lake Manitowoc. Please provide the manner in which notice of this proposed bylaw was given and if any written correspondence was received on this matter. Mrs. West.
Notice of the proposed bylaw was given by advertising in the Parry Sound North Star for 4 consecutive weeks and by circulating the property owners in the immediate area. No written correspondence has been received.
Okay, thank you. That serves as public notice, so I'll now deal with the resolution. Moved by Councillor Ryman, seconded by Councillor Malat. Just trying to make sure everyone can see who's speaking. I'm sure you recognize my voice. That bylaw number 2020-48 being a bylaw to declare to be surplus, stop up, close, and sell part of the original shore road allowance laid out along the shore of Lake Manitowoc in front of Lot 1 and concessions 11 and 12 in the geographic township of McDougall, excuse me, now in the municipality of McDougall, in the district of Parry Sound, designated as Part 3 on 42R-21-395 and Parts 3, 5, 7, and 9 on 42R-21426 for Gray, SA, and Ross and Snelson be introduced and read a first and second time. Discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. Pleasure of council to give this third and final reading tonight. Moved by Councillor Gregory, second by Councillor Constable, that bylaw 2020-48 be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Final discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. No items for the tracking sheet. Closed session we handled earlier in our agenda tonight. We already handled ratification matters from closed session, confirmation bylaw. By Councillor Constable, second by Councillor Gregory, that bylaw 2020-49 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the committee council meeting held on November 4th, 2020 be introduced and read a first and second time. Discussion. All those in favor? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Malat, second by Councillor Ryman, that bylaw 2020-49 be read a third time, passed, signed, and sealed. All those in favor? Carried. Before we adjourn, I should have brought to council's attention, just in case you hadn't been aware of it, the Ontario Municipal Partnership funding for 2021 has been announced by the province. So that information is out in the public domain at this point in time. I think McDougall actually is getting $9,500 more than what we got in 2020. Round figure $780,000 we use. So that's, thank the province. First of all, it is a partnership fund, and it's good that we do have that funding because it's very necessary for us in terms, we're not a large assessment municipality, so it's very important for our operations. I also thank the current government for being very good at making sure we got the information early before we get into the heart of our budget discussion, so we know what we're dealing with. So that's good news on both fronts for that. So if there's nothing else tonight for the good of council, moved by Councillor Constable, second by Councillor Ryman, that we now adjourn at 8:41 p.m. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.